call this meeting to order at 6:30. All board members are present except Keith Schaefer, who will be coming within a half hour or so. He's, the girls volleyball team made regionals, and tomorrow is their first regional game, so we felt it was pretty important for him to at least be at the volleyball practice for a while to get that mindset for them going. We are going to start with presentations to the board, and we're going to start with the National Honor Society.
Hi, so we have our National Honor Society kind of scattered in the back here. So I'm Chris Corbett. I'm pretty sure I know everybody in the room. I'm the president. Connor Zuck here is our vice president of the National Honor Society. Emma Pearson here, she's our historian, and Allie Hines is our current secretary. All sophomores you see down here, and Jack are new inductees. Juniors, I'm sorry. And Carissa and Allie are seniors. So
we'll keep you all for another year, though.
Yeah. All right, are we ready?
There are 4 key pillars of the National Honor Society. First is scholarship, the acquisition of knowledge through study. Leadership, the group of us entrusted to lead and influence others. Service, taking that acquired knowledge, putting it to use, and for the benefit of others. And character, always striving to build a better personality.
We do events every month of the school year, almost every month. And in November, we did this board meeting.
Presenting to our board.
In October and February, we do child care during the parent-teacher conferences.
And then in December, we're doing a pet food drive for like the animal shelter, so that people can have food that want to keep their pets and can't afford to feed them.
In January, we do our yearly bowl-a-thon. It's always a lot of fun.
And then in March, we're not doing anything this year.
But in April, we're doing a beautification day around town.
And then May,
Yeah.
PTO Carnival.
PTO Carnival.
Because you're like, we're out of here. Jacob?
Alright, as Martin and I, we are coordinating the pet food drive. I've gone around, I've talked to Mr. Berry about having, one game where people can get discounted to go into the game and they bring some pet food. We got some posters to advertise that. I talked with Mr. Williams about uploading it onto the school webpage, and then also about putting it on the school Facebook page and the NHS page.
We will be donating this food actually to A Little Help with My Friends. One, it's a non-kill shelter, so the food will help them there. And secondly, they also have a food bank for individuals that have pets that can't afford to pay for food, so they kind of have their own pet food bank for the local area.
In January, we host a bowl-a-thon, which is basically we get a Wii and don't we go in
Yeah, we take one of the rooms and half a day.
We go to one of the rooms, and for the second half of the day, we Wii bowl as a tournament for fun. But leading up to the tournament, we get pledges through money and food items, non-perishable food items, that we donate to the First Congregational Church, and then they in turn use the money and the food to advance their programs here in the community, keeping it in this town, helping hungry people that can't sometimes get a meal, and also just helping out charitably around. So.
We used to go to the Good Samaritan, but we became aware of the fact that even individuals that have used Good Samaritan in the past that live in our community are finding it difficult to access Good Samaritan because of transportation issues. And since the First Congregational Church has opened a food pantry, which I believe has been open a couple of years, we decided to keep our proceeds here in the community to help out our families. Mostly what I wanted to do is I just wanted to introduce you to our group of kids and show you what they are doing in the school. Not only do they do these activities once a month, but they are also sponsoring a tutoring program that meets Mondays and Wednesdays during seminar, and they have been meeting with students who've been referred by teachers that could use the extra help, and that seems to be going very well. It's been accepted by the kids that have been referred. There's always kids with our kids. Sometimes these guys are doubled up with kids because there's so many. So just one more thing that they are trying to provide to our school to help out. Anything else, guys?
Yeah.
All right.
Crap.
That's all we have.
Thank you very much, not only for coming tonight, but for what you're doing for our school. It's really good for us to see what you are doing, especially for the National Honor Society, because in the past, quite often, that's been a group that is just in name only. And it's nice to see you being really effective and doing things for our school and our community.
Good job, guys.
I know I, for one, have heard more than one teacher in this building comment on the fact that some of the students that you all have worked with and helped tutor, they've noticed a marked increase in their test scores and turning in homework or comprehending homework or things that are going on. So thank you for helping out your peers who may need a little extra help. And I know oftentimes if one person explains something and you don't quite get it, it helps to hear it another way. And sometimes that takes hearing it in student language. That's even better. So thank you. Well done.
Okay, guys, you may go now.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, the principal's report.
All right. As I told you last month, Quinn and I are gonna kind of flop detention duties now that he's coaching, so I'll be doing that a little bit more. Still working on the observations, getting paperwork done. Our counselor, Darcy Noms, hosted a STEM event in partnership with Ferris State University. And we had 10th through 12th graders from Central Lake and from Ellsworth participating. We had 52 students from Central Lake and 17 from Ellsworth. They participated in the gymnasium. They did an egg drop activity. The groups were all mixed, and it was a lot of fun to watch them try and build a container to save their egg, and they did really well. It was amazing. Chris Corbett and Carissa Bonnie attended the Rotary Luncheon last month and presented their activities and their experiences from their Lake Leadership Conference last summer. Rotary's going to do the Rotary Student of the Month a little differently. They always had invited students to attend a luncheon or breakfast last year with their parents, and this year they have decided to have a dinner at the end. So we'll still recognize a student a month, but the recognition dinner won't be till the end with the parents. So our Rotary student for this month was Carly Moore. So congratulations to her. And I talked to her parents and sent a letter. Let's see, I talked to you guys last month about Food Corps. We're still looking for somebody, either on the staff or in the community that wants to have a garden club so we can keep the roof house going and flourishing. I completed my next 2 days of my evaluation training. That's done. All of our staff went to the PD Day last Wednesday in Wayne City. Chris and Connor presented. I know you guys have seen this up in or seen it on Facebook probably. Kenny's ticket to go to Japan. Very exciting, very great day. It's up over $13,000 right now, the money in there, so that's really great. this afternoon, we had a gentleman stop by the elementary school, came in and introduced himself. His name is Don Stevens. He said, I'm a World War II veteran, and I saw in the paper that you guys are gonna have an assembly tomorrow and that you have a wall in your school, and so brought him down to the kindergarten room, and Carrie brought him in the room, and all the kids just swarmed him. And when she said, we have a veteran, their eyes just, they were so excited. It was so exciting. He spent quite a bit of time and told you guys a really cool story. So that was really, really neat to see him come today. So I want to invite you guys all tomorrow morning. We're going to have an assembly here in the high school at 8:15. And if you have a chance to stop by the elementary to see the display wall, it's really special. So that's it.
Well, thank you. Are there any other reports right now? Okay, we have no old business at this point. Our next item is guest and public comment. Would anyone like to have anything they want to share or tell us about? Or?
So I have a question. Would you like public comment about the motion now, or is there an appropriate time to talk before the motion happens? Is that now?
I think that it would be fine to have that now.
Is there, I guess,
But
if there's
there
discussion
will
about the
be.
motion, it will be amongst you guys, correct?
Well, we're going to have the finance committee minutes first.
Okay.
And that might be at the point at which we would have discussion. And then when we have the motion, there will also be discussion. But I think that point, the discussion would be more amongst the board. So Quinn, it now would be fine, or wait until after the finance committee?
Okay, well, then I would like to make a comment.
Okay.
I've just seen the motion. Ben made me aware of it earlier today, which I appreciate. And I guess I have, before you guys vote on it, I don't want to say that I take exception to it, but I disagree with it strongly. And I guess I'm speaking from a personal position now. In June of 1990, I was hired here. And from that day forward, I've been all in. I've been all in the classroom. I've been all in the gymnasium, on committees, in professional development. I've been all in wherever I've been needed. It will trouble me greatly if I'm a part-time employee. I think that there's got to be some discussion, there's got to be some deliberation about how to handle cost savings without jeopardizing people who have been here for years. And I'm not just talking about, don't reward people because we've been here. This is my life. I love this place. I've been no place else other than 1 year in Muskegon. And I guess as a matter of public record, I want people to know that I don't want to be a part-time employee. 5, 6 isn't good enough for me. I want more. And I think in all of the years that I've been here, I've tried my best. And I think that I've got a lot more to offer than just being here for part of my day. Thanks.
Thank you, Quinn. I would like to point out that we are not saying with this motion that these cuts will be made. What we are saying is that they are possible. And at the Finance Committee meeting the other night, people did not want to be surprised. They wanted to know ahead of time what might happen. Well, that's the purpose of this motion, is to allow people to know what might happen. It's not necessarily what will happen. There are some changes between now and January that could happen that would change this altogether. But in order to do what we were asked to do at the Finance Committee meeting and let people know ahead of time that there could possibly be these cuts. We don't want you to be surprised. There will be cuts at some point. Possibly not in January though, because for this 44,000, we have other alternatives that might happen that we could deal with it. But at this point, we wanted people to know that this is a possibility, and that's going to be the point of this motion. And the next thing that we were going to do is well, I'm gonna skip over the approval of the minutes and go right to the Finance Committee report. And Ben, would you share that with us, and then the rest of the Finance Committee will comment?
Sure. Do you want to, any other guest public comment?
Do we want to do, is there any other guest and public comment right now? Because we will come back to that again at a later point in the meeting, so. Anyone else? Moving on then. You know what, I think I will do the motion to approve the minutes from the regular board meeting, and the special board meeting on November 2nd, November 4th. Has everybody had a chance to look at those?
Everything makes sense when you read it together.
I would entertain a motion then to approve the minutes from the regular board meeting and the special meeting. Okay, Greg? And Greg's first, and Betsy second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Motion is carried. Let's go ahead now with the committee report from the Finance Committee. This is the meeting that was on November 4th.
No, this,
No, that's not. This is the meeting that was last Friday.
Preceding that, though, was a board meeting on November 4th, which was a discussion, really. But from the Finance Committee meeting, Tracy and Melanie and Sue were there, and we had a good turnout of staff there as well, to take a look at why the board is in this situation mid-year. And we looked at, to start, that we know we're not a formula district, so the taxable valuations from Antrim County within our school district are the dollars from which our budgets derive. There's another district right down the road that's in the same circumstance. Bel Air and us live off those taxable values. At the start of the year, our budget was $2,453,337. And we only went out of formula at the end of last year in May. So when we met with Sherry Common, we asked what are projected growth expectations from this new reality. Since we're not looking at per pupil increases from Lansing, what can we expect? What are the projections? And with strength to the economy returning and real estate and building going on, 2.5% to 3% was a fair figure that they were sharing. 3% of $2,453,000 is above, it's like $81,000 and a few dollars. So it's a pretty good amount you could expect, assuming it holds, to grow year after year. And that assumes everything else stays the same. That assumes costs stay the same, wages stay the same, staffing and everything the same. However, this October, we received a notice from Antrim County due to two reasons: taxable valuation adjustments from tax tribunals, and then commercial PPT exemptions. We were noticed that we were going to be receiving $43,998 less in our budget. We already balanced the budget as we must last spring, and made our staffing projections, made some other adjustments within our capital projects account and the general funds. We'd already pulled money to make sure we had protected the classroom and provided that investment to our students. And this $43,998 was handed down. So the challenge before the board now is what to do in October, now we're in November, when faced with a $44,000 shortfall, after you've already pulled money a couple of years in a row from your capital accounts and from the general fund. What are your options? So the new budget is $2,409,339. We took a look at the remaining capital projects account. $73,440 is in that account. That account is earmarked for transportation. Because it was transferred out of the general fund to be created some years ago, the money's fluid. It can be moved back into the general fund and repurposed for other uses. So as you look at that amount, you think, okay, well, 73,000 exceeds the deficit of 44. Could you just pull it from there? And one thing we talked about was we have earmarked from that account a bus lease. So we paid year one for the lease. We have 2 more years on a 3-year lease, 12,000 and 12,000 that are coming. And then after that, we have the option to buy, much like if you lease a car from the dealership, same arrangement. Or, much like if you lease a car, you can hand the bus back. We, as a board, entertained that option a little over a year ago. We had the cash on hand to buy the bus, but felt it more prudent to keep as much cash as possible and do it over time with the lease in the event something happened and we needed the residual cash for something else. Unfortunately, that's where we are. So, as you look at encumbering 24,000 of that 773, that's 2 payments of 12 and 12. What other dollars are encumbered from that account? We budget about 5,000 on maintenance for the fleet. We're usually pretty good at staying under that. That's one area we're really good at keeping tight. We've got a very efficient motor pool, our bus mechanic, and Transportation Director Larry Essenberg does a super job. So we usually are under that projection. The remaining funds are about, assuming it's 5,000 for maintenance, about $44,440. That's right at the shortfall. So again, you might think, well, that's the solution. We could move that. And the board could move that. However, because the origin of these funds is general fund, these are part of the overall fund balance. And so a lot of times we hear about total operating budget, and then we think about fund balance. We hear a lot of things from Michigan Association of School Boards about what's a healthy fund balance. And the recommendation from years past was 15%, 10%. They've brought the recommendations down over time as districts have operated on leaner and leaner budgets. But we're about 5.19 to 5.29. That's the fund balance. So if you were to pull from this capital account that entire 44, it would bring you down below the 5% threshold. It's an option the board could consider. It's not an option that's recommended by Michigan Association of School Boards because you end up putting your district on a watch list for financial distress. And that can bring with it a lot of additional reporting and other issues that can arise from being on that watch list for financial distress and potential takeover. So boards are cautioned about that 5% threshold for that reason. As we looked in the Finance Committee meeting, as we brainstormed with the staff, we tried to figure out, okay, what dollars are available for use out of what category? So how much could we use from that 73,440? And the answer is about 18,000 to still keep that account's portion of the fund balance holding us steady at the 5%. Then the other question is, are there any other funds? There's about 7,000 that's currently sitting in the general fund that you could use. So you add 7, 18 together, you have 25,000 that you could use and still hover right at the 5% line. Now, you'll then need to do a couple of things before the bus purchase comes up. You would need to put money back into that account after making your next 2 payments of 12,000 and 12,000. You'd need to protect that 42,000 to buy the bus used, if you were going to buy the bus used. Or the board could decide, you know what, the times are tight enough, we're going to ride this lease out for 2 more years and we're going to give the bus back. And that's a decision the board can make at any time. We looked at some substitute efficiencies in the district and realized the board could capture some efficiencies there, ranging depending on how they play out and depending on how we have a position open right now, a drafting position, depending on how long that position is substituted and not contracted. If it goes through the semester, there's some savings there. There's 9,000, there's 18,000, depending on how long it goes. You could collapse the position at the mid-year. We talked about that and looked at, okay, if you shut this program down, you have 16 kids in drafting 2 and 1 together, where do they go? The art teacher in the room said maybe room for 2 or 3. A couple other folks were in the room, and between BAMO and accounting and other programs, I think writing for publications that run 6th hour, I think it was determined, Shelley, correct me if I'm wrong, but there just wasn't room for 16 kids. I don't think. Now, if there is, then that would be an option to look at some savings there. But even if you were to say there is an option for physical space to move more kids in one accounting class, what about online classes? You can do that, but then you're incurring costs at usually a rate of $200 to $225 per kid for that class to purchase something online, plus a monitor in the lab. So there's some cost there. The board has not really considered that option. But we did brainstorm quite a few in the finance committee about how to account for this 44. Could you use 18,000 from capital free? You could. Could you account for some substitute savings in there to make up some of the difference? You surely could. Could you look for other revenue sources? I know one of the discussions was what are there revenue streams out there that are yet untapped? Are there fundraisers or other things we could look to do that are out there? Maybe. I know there was a discussion, I think Bridget brought up, had we maximize the efficiency within the early childhood preschool grant to make sure that the appropriate percentages of transportation and clerical and custodial and administrative are all charged into that account? And the answer is yes. This year it's been accounted for. We do know there will be a larger amount available next year just based on the Grand Traverse Foundation spending formula. Unfortunately, next year doesn't fix this year. And so the position the board's in right now is a $44,000 shortfall after the year's budget was created, through no fault of anyone's. That has created a real math problem that's solvable. It's solvable depending on whether you want to make some adjustments to staff now, or whether you want to make them later, or whether you commit to pulling resources from funds now and making decisions about fund balance thresholds, a bus purchase, or other factors. So, and Tracy and Melanie and Sue, I think that kind of hit the highlights of what we talked about in the finance committee meeting.
I know there was some confusion on that 18,000 and how
Right.
that fit into the bus piece versus the general fund and how it, came under our fund balance.
Right.
And I know it was confusing to me, and I heard several people say, well, if you understand it, explain it to me later. So I think there's definitely some confusion there. So I know we've talked about that capital fund being separate, but it's not separate. It's pulled out and accounted for separately, but it is all part of the general fund. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. So when we actually look at our fund balance, where are we actually at? Because our fund balance includes that capital fund. So where are we at $18,000 and we're at the 5%, or are we at 25,000 or 58,000?
Including everything that's available in that fund. So everything but the 24,000.
Right.
You're between 5.19 and 5.29.
Okay, and the dollar amount is what dollar amount?
Dollar amount is going to range. Calculator, make sure that's the right. Approximately 126,000, give or take that 4,000 to 7,000 that we talked about on the bottom of that page. That's the unknown between.
Okay, so we have $104,000 to play with to be at 5%.
No, that's the amount.
I think that's where we're getting confused. I think we need to know what the dollar, we're putting all of our money, everything from whatever
Okay.
fund in one. We're making one balance sheet. What money do we have? We want to be at 5% at the bottom. We're accounting for all budgets, all expenses, everything that we've already got on the table that we have to pay out. 2 years worth of bus lease.
24,000, right?
Okay, so what do we have that, whether it's, no matter where it's from, what dollar amount do we have
So
that
it will
would keep
not-
us at 5%?
$24,500 to $25,500, so right about that
Conservative.
25,000.
Conservative was at 22 to 24,000.
And you could take it right up to the 25 if you wish. That would be right at the 5%. And the gamble there is, are there any mid-year issues that come up with salt or plowing or?
Which I understand
What was
that,
our
I just think,
adjustment, Ben, what was our adjustment last year?
We moved 75,000 from the capital account and 38,000 from the general fund.
That was the mid-year adjustment?
No, that was this past spring, as we were balancing the budget and staffing was for this school year.
Right, yeah, that, but last year, what did, because we were off mid-year and we had no money
Mid-year
mid-year too.
adjustment. Michelle, I don't have the figure.
I was thinking it was mid-30s, maybe
Yeah.
40,
I think it
something
was,
like
I think it
that,
was
38.
30 something. Right now, what we talked about in the finance committee is, okay, how are we doing? As we looked at various accounts, how are we doing this year with, excuse me, with regards to what was projected? How close are we? At best guess, because we're only one quarter in, we were down 2,700 in REAP funds, and that's based on head count, Rural Education System Program. We were down $850 in athletic gate receipts in one account. Had higher cost in workman's comp by the tune of $1,800, and had an unknown football gate receipt balance just because, as of the last meeting when we calculated, this season was not over. So we will have those figures shortly. We were down $5,350 without the football season. So.
and am I correct that when we did the budget, this year, we calculated, because that was one of the things we ran into was the, the rough winter that we had, and we didn't budget for that.
Right.
But this year, we budgeted high again.
We
right?
budgeted high just to be safe.
Make sure.
Right. We did not want
And that
any.
was in the heating and
Right.
all those areas.
We had heating, we had plowing, we had salt, we had tractor maintenance, we had some costs that just went up pretty dramatically because of the rough winter. But so that didn't happen, we kept those costs high. So could you capture, if it's a milder winter, there may be something there?
But not to expect that.
No.
I'm just looking at things that we have
Right.
not accounted for, that might be out there that we could use.
Right.
I just think that the board needed to know that bottom line dollar amount.
Right.
Because it was just so confusing on this from there and that from there, and we all add differently, right? Thank you.
No, you're welcome.
So what I'm hearing is we're already 5,000 over, not counting 44.
Correct.
Not counting 44,
The 5,000 that's
Oh, plus
currently,
additional, yeah.
as you look at the year's budget projection, that would be additional.
so 49.
And there is a variable in there with football gate that may bring it back to 4 or may increase it, I don't know.
When will we know that number?
Michelle? Football gate, could we know that by Monday, Tuesday? I'm
We
assuming-
any more money for football? I don't think we have.
No.
Okay.
850, I think was the number.
That was
maybe that
volleyball.
we were,
That was fine.
Okay.
Football was yet undetermined because the season was still
right, but I gave you a number
for volleyball.
for football, and then we weren't sure if they were gonna make it to regionals or
Right.
not. So football might, I think football might have been at it even.
Well, I think what we were waiting on to see is if we were actually gonna be above and actually
And
get
I
some
remember I put a
extra.
question
Yeah.
mark down because I wasn't sure, but if you could confirm whether it's flat, up, or down.
I think it's flat.
Okay.
We were waiting to see if they were gonna go to regional, because then we would have made some additional funds.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah.
Okay, does anyone have any additions to the finance committee meeting?
It's good to have the teachers there and their input.
It was. It was very good. Okay, moving on then, a review of the expenditure log and approval of the October bills. Has everyone had a chance to look at those? Are there any questions or comments? Then I would entertain a motion to approve the logs and the bills as presented. Okay, so Tracy,
Tracy,
And,
Melanie second.
okay. Is there any discussion on it? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Motion is carried. We are going to move on to the action item. And this is the way it is worded here. I would entertain a motion to approve an adjustment to the 14-15 school year staffing model to capture maximum savings from substitute positions, to reduce by 1 hour each the K-12 music and band position, the Dean of Students position, and the elementary special ed position. It would be effective January 26, 2015, at the beginning of the second semester. And this motion is being made in order to give maximum notice to the affected employees, to minimize the impact of students in the classroom, and allow the district to capture the savings that are required to account for the mid-year reduction to the annual budget. And this is really important, this last part. In the event that the district's finances improve between now and January 26th, the board will revisit any of the proposed staff reductions that are outlined above. The reason we did this is so that if it occurs that we will have to make this reduction, you will know about it. Do we think it will? I don't know. You know, you guys had some ideas. You suggested that we have meetings of all the different groups involved and see if we can come up with some ideas for making this money. I think that any number of things could happen between now and January. Yes? Okay, so I will entertain that motion.
So can I apologize for not asking this when we asked about the important questions. I'm still a little unclear about the bus money and why it's being so much.
Sarah, we'll come back to that, okay, in just a second, because it has been moved. Do we have a second on that motion? Who moved it?
I did.
Greg did.
Second.
All right, it has been moved and seconded, so that motion is on the floor. And now we can have discussion, and Sarah, that's perfect.
Okay, and I should have time to my question is why some of the bus money was not taken into this motion. We certainly understand the risk we put ourselves at as we push towards the 24,000, getting closer to 5%. But why was some of that not considered?
Oh, in the motion, why didn't they put
Why,
some?
why is that not a part of the motion at all, any of the bus funds, regardless of the amount?
Right. Ben, would you like to answer that question?
I know at the board level, there's been discussion, and if I can capture it best, there's really maybe more than two, but I'll try and keep it two ways of looking at this. One way is utilize maximum dollars available to the very last minute and put off any staffing adjustments until they're no longer available. So that would include maximizing the 18,000 from bus and then 7,000 from the then making a lesser adjustment, or maybe no adjustment, trying to capture some sub savings and minimizing the impact to staff. The board has then talked about if that happens, not only have you lowered to the very bottom limit of your fund balance, but you also have reduced your ability to absorb any other impacts that may happen throughout the year. And you know these cuts will then be a factor in the spring. The other philosophy that I've heard repeatedly, and I've heard of both probably equally so, they're two very solid opinions, solid camps, is if you make the adjustments now and give the due notice now, and things change between now and January, is there a grant? Is there another revenue stream? Are things on the table down the road that we don't know about? Could you then go back and revisit? Sure. But what you've also done is preserved to the maximum ability possible your liquid finances for any other needs that might come up. And so I think one is let's utilize every single thing we can right down to the 5% and then make staffing adjustments. The other is we pulled money 2 years ago. We really are that tight and we can't afford to go any lower. The cuts are coming. Rather than an even larger adjustment in the spring, budgeting in the next year, it needs to be more measured, some now and some later. Am I capturing that right, Sue?
Right, but did the finance committee discuss using a portion of that, or does that benefit us very little?
They did,
So,
yeah.
you know, 5,000.
Yep.
And that just, there's not much of a savings. Small amount, is that?
So I guess there's one thing I wanted to, and I said at the last meeting as well, what could happen in the future, and one of those in the future is losing our at-risk funding. So if we lose that half a kid that is still on the table today, in February, we will be paying out $7,600 for the loss of that half a child. Yep, and God hope that half a child doesn't use its other leg and walk away. We won't lose that. So, I said at the last meeting, I keep coming back to it, we're walking thin ice.
I guess one thing that I would like to say, I guess I left with a completely different take on our last meeting, completely opposite. So I don't know where I got my thought from, but maybe it was my own. But I thought that we had 4 or 5 people say in publicly that they were for using up to, we didn't come up with an exact figure, but up to that $18,000 that was available to help offset some of this. And I don't know, tell me if I'm wrong, but I didn't hear that at our last meeting. And I know we have time to think and we, maybe have changed our opinions and that's fine. But I went away with that thought process from the last meeting. And I understand the future, but just like the past, we're not dealing with either of them right now. We're dealing with this 44,000. I am all for, your outlook in the future and growing this district to wonderful things, I am on board. But right now, we're faced with one thing, and that's getting through this year's budget. And I know it could happen, but I just don't think it's gonna happen, that we're gonna lose that at-risk funding. I mean, is there any thought out there that we have kids that are leaving? Is anybody?
I think there is, and I don't think anybody on the board is happy to be in this position, but the trend has been is that we keep pulling this money. I mean, over the last few years, we keep pulling general fund money, and the trend has been that we've had to keep utilizing these funds. And we're gonna hit a point, whether it's right now, it might be 6 months from now, where we have none. So you have to make these kind of decisions either now, or we may have to make them at the end of the school year, and that's a very high possibility. We can't predict what will happen, but unfortunately, the trend has been that we have had pulling this money. So there's a very high possibility that we will make that point where we
I think we will.
One of the things that I just realized, Tracy, when we left the finance committee meeting on Friday was that if we pulled that amount of money, the 18,000 took us down to the 5%, we have nothing left to deal, we don't even have $7,500 to deal with if we lose that at-risk funding. We have nothing to draw
It's
from.
not 7,500, isn't it 75,000?
No, because it's only 10% of that.
Oh.
But even on top of that, you know, you're already $5,300 out of budget right now on top of 44, so.
We are.
And every time.
You said that.
Oh, 5,300.
Well, and every time, you know, there's nothing left to draw from. It's, you know.
Well, and I understand that, and maybe it's not the full 18,000, or, well, then the figure you used was 24 something. You know, maybe it's not that full 24,000, maybe it's 15,000, maybe it's 10,000. You know, maybe it's a smaller portion. I don't think we've had any kind of discussion about dollars of what we're gonna do. We haven't put anything together, sat down and said, we're gonna cut this, and we're gonna cut this, and we're gonna cut this. These were options of people that we could cut, but, you know, the one thing that comes to my mind, the preschool, you know, music, that, when that was first brought up to us, was that written into the grant that they have? So how are we gonna pull music? I mean, because that's what you said to us in the finance committee, was that.
Allowable use, right?
That you were gonna pull that from the preschool. If it was written into the grant, my integrity does not say that that's okay. You know, they gave us that grant for, I mean, to line itemize that grant, then if we said music, we gotta provide music.
No, what we said was, we want to be able to use funds for clerical, administrative, transportation, electives. You know, music's one of those electives, any other push-in program.
So if we pull that away, how, when Mr. Ellis stands in front of us, how would we just explain that to him?
We've honored the grant because we've used the grant for clerical, administrative. We've used the grant portion of it for part of the year for music. If the board changes that and chooses to move a portion of funds away from music to utilize more funds for clerical or administrative, to then lower that cost on the general fund, that's an option for the board, and it's grant allowable. You're moving money from one area to another to take care of a budget shortfall. It surely wasn't the intent, or I wouldn't have written the grant that way, because, I mean, obviously we wanted that in there. We put that in there, and it's been in there. And so, if it continues to be in there, great, because we know it's doing good things for kids. But it is a part of the options that, you know, that I know the board had talked about, in order to create some savings.
And, you know, I know the cuts are gonna be tough this spring. I mean, you know, there's gonna be things that are gonna have to happen. We have no choices. But, you know, Darcy the other day, when she talked about mid-year cuts, and I thought she articulated it very well, how difficult that is for people's budgets and so forth. And we are all human beings, and we do have to keep that in mind. And, you know, I just want that to be said. And I will just be honest, I feel with this motion that I feel a little blindsided by it.
Well, I think we should note that we appreciate our staff, since we've already depleted our capital down to what it is. So we didn't cut other times because we felt, you know, that it was important, and so we were taking from our savings, and now we have no savings. That's it. So I think if we could come up with something that was put in here, we know we're going to have to do something. So could we put something, could we adjust the amendment to bring in a certain portion to take a little bit from our fund balance, a little bit from staff, and a little bit from administration, and then see if something changes in January?
If the board votes this motion down, there's
In terms of the fund balance, we had, right before this meeting today, we had a meeting with the auditor, and he gave us these nice little sheets that show what the last 5 years look like. 5 years ago, in 2010, our fund balance was just under $500,000. And now it's down to
126,
Yep.
637.
Right. So, you know, we've already depleted the fund balance so drastically that I think it's tough to take it out of there again.
It's already done. I think, you know, that we've already taken the money out.
So then when we don't have anything left, then we adjust our.
Yeah, we're just gonna,
I mean,
well,
to me, that's all that's
I feel
happening.
we
here.
still
It's
have-
just-
it's
So
a
we know we're
Band-Aid.
gonna do it.
It's a Band-Aid.
I think we have a Band-Aid until this week.
And, you know, I also thought about that money. I mean, we're already allocated it for the bus. So it's not like we had, you know, in our budgetary terms, it was allocated for the bus. So we're really robbing Peter to pay Paul is what we'll be doing. So it's not like we had that money sitting there as a nest egg. You know, it wasn't a nest egg, it was going to go to the bus. So, you know, we have to make a decision about how to raise money for that bus, where the teachers brought up the possibility of a bond, good thought process. I don't know that our taxpayers would want to do that, but it's, you know, something that we could look at. You know, there are options, but, you know, let's get through this and then look at what we have to do next year. Great.
Oh, I don't want to, but I guess I keep coming back to where's the long-term plan on this? And Band-Aids eventually soak through, and we've got an open wound once again. And by taking from our capital, which we've done, looks like for the past, I would say 4 years on that chart, it doesn't leave us any room. Historically, we have discussions in late winter to early spring about any sort of early incentive for veteran staff. I'm afraid if we were to take from that, there would be, there probably wouldn't be much of a discussion to have at the end of the spring. And sometimes we have discussions in the fall, in the early winter, and that as far as that option. So I just keep going back to where can we be, you know, instead of cut, and all that, where we can make our most effective dollars utilized, I guess, for that. And there, I just, if we pull that, whatever number we choose, if we may or may not choose to pull from capital, it's less, I guess it handcuffs a little bit in the next few months.
I can't vote on something that I don't know what's at the top of my list. If you're alluding to something, like a plan, then we should act on it. And if we can't act on it tonight, then we should postpone voting on this. But I don't feel that we can vote on something and then hope that something's going to happen. I don't understand that.
I think I get what you're getting at.
So I don't mean to interrupt, but it's related to maybe what the purpose of this is. If the purpose is to give notice for the benefit of teachers, then maybe we need to understand how important that is. If that's important, then we need to get something put together fast. But if that's something that can be put off so that we can have more discussion about it, we should.
Well,
That's
even
where I'm confused.
whether or not this passes or does not pass, this motion, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. What it means is that it can happen, it could happen. If any of those things that we talked about Friday with the people that if those do not happen and we do not have any more money coming in, then this is the choice we're going to have to make in January. And I just don't want people to assume if we don't make any motion or any movement that everything is fine. So, that's where I'm at. I mean,
Well, and, and I understand that, it's out there that the teachers know what we're looking at as far as cuts. I mean, that's definitely, what we're looking at. But I'm with Betsy in the fact that I'm not comfortable with, like, if we're gonna make cuts, I wanna know we're taking $16,000 from this and $15 from that, and I wanna know where we're cutting it. I don't want the umbrella. I wanna know why we're cutting it and, how much it's gonna be. And then we prioritize what those cuts are, how we feel that's gonna affect kids and all those things that we've talked about. And we look at it piece by piece.
do you not think we've done that with those 6 options that we had?
Well, yeah, but those options are not here. This is not what those 6 options were.
No, but it's one of them.
Yeah, it's one of them, but it's not dollar-wise. I don't see the dollars in here of what it's gonna save us. And that's what I wanna see. I wanna see if there's.
Well, that's on that other sheet. One with the 6 options?
That we got, yeah, the 6 options, but
Yeah.
this doesn't say option 4, taking, $16,000 from this and 8,000. That's what I would like to see, so that we make a decision piece by piece on what we're gonna do. Because maybe we need to do A, but we don't need to do B because we've got this much savings for,
I think
the
if
sub
I'm,
stuff.
if I'm wrong, tell me, but I think what the motion is saying is if we don't have more funds by this date, we'll pick one of those options then. This is just allowing us to say, we may pick an option. We don't have an option picked. We may still pull from the bus funds because.
No, I don't think so. This tells us what we have to
This
do.
doesn't say anything about the
Okay, then
I'm sorry.
no, that's okay. I still am having a hard time. I know that it's a Band-Aid and I know that funds are tight, but I have a hard time saying, let's not give the special ed kids the help they need, that they're getting now, that they're used to, that's helping them with their test scores and whatever it is that those kids need. Let's,
But
sorry.
Melanie, I don't think anyone's saying we don't want to do this. Ideally.
I know, but I'm saying that if we can pull from that bus fund to have the least impact on the kids, that needs to be an option too. Before we say, well, we'll do this and that.
But at some point.
We're gonna have to.
Yes,
we might.
Now, January, hopefully things get better where we go.
Right.
No, I haven't, and I kind of, this interests me, but, the reason I seconded it is because we can have discussion on it, because if there wouldn't have been any discussion. So blindsided or not, we can talk about it, and that's why. I'm in between a few things also, because I see, at least one thing in here that I think is a big impact on the kids. And I still don't know which way I want to go with it, or should go with it.
I commend Sue's desire to make sure that the teachers know, because I think one of the things that she found out in the finance committee is that people want to know in advance when there's going to be a cut. And none of us foresaw this happening, so we did not know. So she's trying to give you some forewarning.
And I think the earlier the better on that if something happens. I agree with that.
So
For
you
sure.
agree with that, but I'm still hoping that something will change and we won't have to do those cuts, and I don't wanna be necessarily bound to this.
Betsy, nobody hopes we don't have to make these cuts more than I do, because
I know.
I really feel that all three of these areas we're cutting are extremely important. Sarah made a terrific advocation for the music the other day, Quinn's position, we know how important that is. The special ed, you know, I mean, you never know how special ed may change. I don't wanna make these cuts, and frankly, I hope we don't. I mean, but if there are no alternatives, if nothing comes up between now and January to change things, we're gonna have to. Because, yeah, we can say we'll use those bus funds, but as a school district, can we bring our fund balance down to virtually zero? Because that's what that 5% is. If we go below that, we might as well throw it in as a school district. I mean,
Well, we wouldn't want to.
well, no, because they, you know, then we put ourselves in a position to be taken over and.
Well, it's not like we're way over it right now.
No.
You know, and
So to take more from that is to me, it's fiscally irresponsible.
Well, I would never condone going less than 5%. I mean, but that's the, you know, that's the
I
place.
think at some point we are going to go 5%, because that's what you do, you spend all the money.
That we're not for
We-
profit.
Well, I mean, yes, I mean, we could go right to that bottom line, and let's say we lose our at-risk funding for next October, whatever. There's a $75,000 loss there for next year. Beyond that, I mean, the picture is not rosy at all. It's looming, is not even the word to say. It's here, it's now.
So,
I'm gonna have to take a lot of
and
Zygozy
you talked
tonight.
about this and got teacher feedback. If it's a timing thing, what's the best timing? So, you know, assuming that things are not going to get better, is the best timing to do something now? Is the best timing for the board to make a decision rather than in January, at the end of the school year? What's the impression of the finance committee?
Well, you know, the teachers made the comment that, you know, they didn't feel they were notified, but I don't think it was notified that I'm getting cut. And Michelle, maybe you could help me with this, but more so notified that it was happening at all. Am I correct? No, we didn't, but there was, is that what your concern was?
One of the concerns was that at the last meeting, people showed up by chance at the last meeting and found out that their position is on the chopping block or part of it. So that was a concern, just that, hey, we're gonna have a meeting tonight, we're discussing making some cuts. Your position, or an hour of your position, or 2 hours of your position is going to be discussed as a possibility to be cut. And that was something that people did not know until they came here and listened to that discussion. Some people did know because a discussion was had, some people did not. So that was one of the things, and if you guys can help me on too, but that was a concern.
So that was,
So, I mean, at this point, now they know,
Well,
it's there, and now they know.
And the thing is, that was a discussion meeting, it was not, nothing was decided at that meeting, nothing was, it was brought up, and thankfully they were there and did know about it, but that was, you know, for most of us, this has been so abrupt, it hasn't been something that started in June and we've been discussing it since then. This 44,000 is immediate, I mean, it came up and it has to be solved.
So just to clarify what Michelle said, the communication issue was more just being aware of it and not so much about getting told what the decision is.
Right.
Which would mean that there is maybe not necessarily a need for us to make a decision at this meeting. We made it in December, that could still.
I think the only difference between making a decision now and later is
Is it
the
gonna
time
be-
people have to adjust to it. Am I
But is
wrong
that a
with that?
concern? That's my question. If that's not a concern.
I don't know, and one thing we're looking at here too, is that in January, we will have virtually a new board because 3 of us will not be here. And you will have 3 new people on the board. And I guess my point here was to at least have a foundation for the new board to make decisions. And if nothing, you know, if we don't decide anything and we leave it open to discussion from now until January, and then in January we have 3 new board members who are going to walk in and have to make this decision right then. That we're putting them in a tough position. So, Carrie.
Is it okay to ask a question?
Sure.
If the staff chose to want to do something, be it fundraising, looking for grants or whatever, I'm assuming we would not want to wait until January 26th, because then you're saying if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. So in preparation for that, we would want to be having discussions about what to do like now.
Now, right.
In preparation for that, could you, and I'm saying either you personally or finance committee, could you create a document that gives us specific amounts? For example, what this amount's going to buy us, what this amount is going to save us, so that we have some kind of a target to shoot for. Because I don't want to speak for everybody here, but I have a hunch that's where we're going to go with this. We're not going to sit by and just let this happen. We're going to try to do something. So if we had some kind of a target that perhaps was itemized, so we could see what the dollar is and what is the cutoff. You know, if we're going to put this in a little bank or fund somewhere, when do you need to see how much it is? Can we go until January 26th? Can we go until January 1st? You know, if you could decide those kind of things for us so we have some really specific information to shoot for, then perhaps we'll make some decisions or goals for what we might want to try to do.
Then is that within the realm of possibility to provide that?
It is.
Okay.
Just looking ahead.
And the other thing, Carrie, is this is exactly what my point was in considering this motion. Because that kind of thing needs to happen if we're going to not do this. But I wanted people to be aware that this is the reality. If we don't have any changes and if things don't look different, this will happen in January. But if we can do some things like you talked about to get money somewhere, then this won't happen in January. Will it happen sometime? Maybe, because we're still going to have major cuts to make in, when we do the next year's budget. But yeah, it would put it off until then.
Carrie, to your point, the January board meeting is January the 12th.
That's right.
Well, we have that kind of information by the December board meeting, so that you guys, as this board, have that information and say, you know, this is what we're gonna do, X, Y, Z, you know, each, you know, we're gonna take 10 from here, and so forth. And then, this is what we're laying out there, and then.
Ben, at the end of the day, you talked about capturing about 25,000. Is that best for us now, if we
Some cost efficiencies,
Yeah.
yeah, 20-ish, 25.
what would that look like for every contracted employee with shipment? If you split that between contracted employees, salary contracted employees, if it's all chipping a little.
I don't know. Let me make sure I understand what you're asking. The dollar amount, let's say 20 or 25. What are you asking, how much?
Per contracted employee.
But he's asking if everyone agreed to take a 1% pay cut, would that cover your deficit? I mean, maybe that's not exactly, but that's.
Just on it, yeah.
I think a 1%.
Well, I mean, that's just a number, but it could be
But I think
anything.
that'd probably be close.
A 1% may be close.
So help me understand it, if you're saying if every employee agreed to take a pay cut, it would save the positions. Every contracted employee agreed to take a pay cut, it would save these positions and put off this decision until next year's budget.
And there's a couple things to remember. You have categories of employees, so you have folks under a collective bargaining agreement who are full-time or part-time. You have full-time folks who are not under a collective bargaining agreement, but who are still salaried. You have other folks who may have an individual contract who are either full or part-time, who are also not under a collective bargaining agreement. So you can't really say, I mean, I think if you're asking what is a math problem.
Contracted salaries, lawyers.
Yeah, but it's not as simple as saying we're going to float this idea, or, because you would have to explore the legalities of opening a contract. You would have to do some things as a board. It would not be as simple as, here's what we're going to do.
Yeah, but
Understood, but it's a possibility.
Yes.
Anything.
But isn't that what you're saying to those people that they have a signed contract? The people that you're gonna possibly cut, those 3 positions, they have a signed contract for this year. How do you get beyond that?
If the board approved a motion, what they would be doing is changing a position. So if a person is contracted for a position, and the position is reduced due to reduction in force, the person in the position is reduced. That may sound like word mumbo jumbo, but
Yeah, it does.
but that is the legality of it. So a board can reduce a position, and if there's only one person in that position who's highly qualified, certified to do the position, the person is thereby reduced. Unless the person is certificated to do something else, then you have to look at what else might they teach and or do. Seniority issues come into play.
Do they?
Excuse me?
Seniority comes into play?
It can.
Oh, I say, because that doesn't prove that at all, that option.
Excuse me?
The option that's on there right now does not show anything to prove that seniority was considered.
They've been considered for all 3, and that's why it's on there. And so what the board has to look at are reductions in force options that take into consideration the legalities of the contract to include seniority and to include all other things they have to look at. So you have to maintain this proper certificate for the job. You have to make sure that your reduction is not arbitrary or capricious. So you're just targeting a position, not an individual. And that may sound like a nuance, but that's the challenge before the board. That's how they have to if they're gonna make a reduction, that's how they have to make it.
So for what I hear is that in the realm of everyone wanting to look at everything, that's a very viable possibility.
But we can't.
I'm not hearing
force
that.
Right? That's not on our, that's not something we can choose.
No, it would have to come from the staff. And while we're talking about other possibilities, and something that no one has, it's like the elephant in the room.
Thank you.
So one of the other things that we've talked about is that we have some staff members who feasibly could take the early retirement option. And if they chose to take the early retirement option and did it in January, what we would save and what we would pay as a buyout, we would have enough money to cover this. And nobody seems to want to talk about that because, you know, nobody wants people to leave who have that amount of years in. But it is a possibility, and it's one that could be considered, so.
Well, I know in the finance committee meeting, I went on record saying that, you know, I, for one, unless directed by the board to do so, wasn't inclined to do that because regardless of how the math looks, if you have a veteran who makes twice what a first-year person makes, regardless of the math, it becomes, and certainly would feel like, a value judgment. So I don't ever want to go to a 30-year veteran and say, you know what, or a 28-year veteran and say, you know what, we really need you to go to solve the math problem. That, I don't want to do that, so I haven't done that, nor do I wish to do that. I know there's a difference between an ERI that's in a contract. If a person wants to take a look at that, that's his or her prerogative. But I also know that everyone's career is their own career. Some folks want to go as soon as they can and start a second career. Some folks want to try and beat Denny Rich and teach 45 years or 48 years. And that's fine. I totally respect that. And some folks are in the middle. And so I would never want to say, just because you have time in, that the district is encouraging you to go. You need to go now, hurry, hurry. Because the unwritten message is, you're not valued and you need to go. So I don't want to be the one to say that. And that's what I said the other night.
And I don't think that's a good message to send as a board either.
Yes.
Are we having open discussion now? Like I could speak?
You may speak.
Okay. A couple of things that Ben mentioned. First thing is the AutoCAD classes and possibly not having those AutoCAD classes anymore, and explaining that you didn't think that they could fit in other classrooms. Could you explain that in more detail so that the board can hear and the teachers and parents can hear in regards to that?
Sure. We have a vacancy currently. It's being subbed. We have a posting. We may fill it, we may not fill it. However, it's a challenging class to fill, to find someone with the IX endorsement who has the VOC certification. Not easy, especially for a 2-hour job. So as time goes on, one thing that we talked about briefly at the finance committee meeting was, at some point, the board, the district, principal, and myself will have to make a value judgment to how long can this class be subbed if it's not AutoCAD, and what's the efficacy of that, the fairness to the kids that have asked for it. So at some point, does it make sense to collapse that? Well, we have a semester coming in about 8.5 weeks. Is that the juncture? Okay. So a lot of ifs, if we can't find a person who's qualified, if they don't take the job, if we, a lot of ifs. But if we get there and we collapse that position and reschedule those students into other electives, is there a savings? Yes, it's the second half of the amount that's budgeted for that class. Is there a cost? Well, there may be a cost, depending on where they go. And so if we don't have room for 16 students to go into other electives and we have to purchase online class electives or what have you, you may erode some of your savings of collapsing that job. Couple that with the fact that as a district, we've tried diligently to make sure we're providing direct credit, dual enrollment opportunities to our students, this being one of them that has a college credit partnership with NCMC. It's not an option that's on the front burner for being collapsed today.
So
Now,
dollars
from
and
now-
cents is what I'm looking for. If you choose to not hire somebody to teach those classes, and you can disperse those students, and don't get me wrong, my son took those classes, I think they're important.
They are.
But if you were to do that instead of cutting one of our teachers, where you might end up losing one of our teachers because they can't pay their bills because they are now a part-time employee and have put their heart and soul into the school system, would it not be more apropos to our community to not hire that position, to dissolve and find any way possible to put those kids in the classrooms? You have 20 students in an art class right now. I teach art. You could very easily put 8 or more of those students into that art class. Would you possibly have to find her a bigger room or a space to go? Possibly. But I think that is a better avenue for our community to keep the community together than to automatically, right now, right here today, say this is our only option to take when we have other options open like that to be able to not hurt within our community.
I have a question. Can Quinn teach 12? I mean, if you have 2 classes, you want to take an hour away from him. Could he teach
He's not
1
highly
hour a
qualified.
day? I mean, he could do it as a sub.
So,
He could sub, but then he'd have sub pay, that'd still be a pay cut.
I was just thinking that that would account for the hour of his time and whatever.
Isn't the $25,000 work rate plus taking into consideration classroom?
Okay,
it
so,
takes
yeah.
into consideration subbing it for
And I
the
want that.
semester, so there isn't a value for class. That would add more.
Well, and our goal, it seems, here is the least impact on students.
So how much is it, Ben, that we have allocated?
If you collapsed the semester, it would add about 10,000.
It would add, based on what will it is.
Yeah, so if you folded it at the semester, you'd add about 10,000.
By moving them in the
Correct.
existing courses.
Provided it didn't cost you to move them anywhere. So long as there was so long as they could be rescheduled at no cost, and you weren't having to, look at any extra class parts or something online, you could save
How much do we pay for online classes? Is it $200 a class?
It's about depends on the vendor, about $225, can be as high as $250.
So even if you got 2/3 of those kids into a classroom and 1/3 of those kids took a $200 online class, the school's still gonna save money.
Yep.
Who would monitor those kids? Where would those kids go?
You then pay a monitor to be in the room.
But does a
Is
monitor
there-
have
is
to
there
be a certified teacher or could be at a lower pay scale?
It depends on the vendor. So if you use Michigan Virtual, they provide the certificated teacher, and so you could use a teacher assistant as the adult supervisor. If you use a different vendor that might cost you a little less, but doesn't guarantee the licensed certificated individual, then you have to technically have that certificated individual in the room. So your costs balance out pretty similar. I mean, 6 of one, half dozen the other. It would cost you a little bit. Would there still be savings? Yes, there would.
And I guess that's the option that I'd like to keep open. Obviously, everybody knows who I am here too. I teach in another school district, but I'm a parent here. I know how they feel, and I know how I feel as a parent. And I want what's best for my kids, yes, but I also, long-term, don't want to lose good people that are not only a part of this school, but the community, which means, board, that we could lose students. And we've all heard and talked and over about how we're losing students and we can't lose students. So keeping your options open would look a lot better than to say, this is exactly what we're doing, we're making this decision. We're not looking elsewhere for where can we get 10,000 here, 10,000 there, 10,000 there, and keep coming up with those small amounts to cover for these teachers so that we don't lose them.
Well, and this motion does not say this is what we're going to do. It does not say that this is the only alternative. It says that this is a possible alternative that will happen if we don't come up with some other alternatives. We have the discussions open. We're going to have discussions open between now and then. We're going to have hopefully some action things going on to get some of this money.
But to clarify, so it does not say possible.
It doesn't.
It says that's the one being considered,
Yeah.
those 3 positions right there.
So what difference does it make then, so that we table it or not? As long as we are, it's clear to everybody that something has to be decided at the January board meeting, no matter what. That's how, if people are comfortable with that,
Okay, well, we have this motion on the floor. Let's vote on it. It's been moved and seconded to approve the adjustment to the 14-15 school year staffing model to capture maximum savings from substitute positions and reduce by 1 hour each the K-12 music and band position, the Dean of Students position, and the elementary special ed position, effective January 26th at the beginning of the second semester.
Can we table it though, because the table it means that it's still a motion, but postponed.
I don't think we want to table it.
Re-motion it.
Yeah, I think we want to vote on it and then make another motion. I'm going to do a roll call vote. Sarah?
I'm good at a name.
Pardon me? Tracy?
No.
Melanie? Greg? Betsy? No, it's unanimous no, so this does not pass. Now to go on, does somebody want to make another motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we take the time to itemize the cuts that we think are the less effective to kids. Itemize dollar-wise, what we're gonna save, so we can clearly look at what we need and what we, in using all options. And that we do this, get something together and have a motion, have an action motion ready at the December board meeting.
So, I just want to
I'm not
clarify.
probably saying it very
No,
well.
I'm just asking, because it
Are we, I mean, are
it
you
sounds
at,
a little bit, sorry, just, as a clarifying, would it read like, is your motion, or you want to revisit the proposed options that we had, 1 through 5
Right,
and all
that we go back
So we
to
go
all
back to our-
options, there's no options off the table.
Right, we go back
Everything,
to our
whether it be
sheet.
the bus, whether it's a
Exactly.
math teacher, a social studies teacher, if we decide we're gonna close the elementary school, I'm not sure. Yeah, just to say that we're gonna.
Just would say we're revisit our previously proposed options.
Well, not necessarily previously proposed, because I'm thinking there's things out there that may not be proposed. So I think we need to either have Ben or the finance committee or a meeting or the board as a whole come down and get the pens and pencils out and come up with dollars, because I think that's what we need to do. A broad brush isn't gonna help anybody. We need specifics as to what we're gonna do, and this is what it's gonna save us. Because why would we wanna cut $55,000 if we only need to cut 44? To me, that just doesn't make sense right now. If we need to go to the 55 later, so be it, but no, right now we know we've got 44 to deal with. So let's deal with that, and then if something else comes up, but who knows, we could have, M&M could build a house in Central Lake School District, we don't know.
This year, but.
So, I think.
It doesn't move that much.
It's
Non-homestead, it'll be all right.
Hey, Sarah, did you get the wording for that?
Oh, sorry.
That's a long motion.
That was on
Or Tracy, if you
Ben,
want to
you
reword
got
it somehow, or.
Ben, you thought you understood what I said.
I think I got the gist of it, but I don't want to miss a piece I'm trying to restate. But if I heard you right, I think you said something to the effect of, take time with pen to paper and calculate multiple options to
we
get
need a motion?
I'm just trying to help.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe we don't even need a motion.
Oh, you got it, there you go.
You need just motion.
Good.
Motion to reconsider.
See, show
Well,
her,
we
show Tracy, see if that's what she said.
Well, since we voted down this motion we have, we don't really need to make another motion.
Motion to itemize and
Dollar-wise.
dollar-wise, least impact,
Other
other options, and have an action motion ready for the December meeting.
I have a question. Sewer, but I have a question. I mean, we also have a lot of responsibility as a board over our finances. So at what point are we, what's our date? What is our date where we need to be making sure that we're not losing money or cost savings from a financial standpoint? Is it January?
I think from the feedback I received from the board, you could add feedback from the staff. If you're looking to provide an opportune time for any, going back to Will's point, for any schedule adjustments, you don't want to make those on a random Wednesday in the middle of the quarter, because you've got a real mess, especially when you're dealing with high school students and credits earned, whether or not they have college credits attached to them, and transcripts, grade point averages. It has to be at a nice, clean break, and students, they're who we're here for. So if you were to look for that opportune time, it would be a semester change. So I think that
So
may.
I mean, I think it's important to show that responsibility and to say that, although we want further discussion to discuss different options and interact with possible future feedback, that we set a date for semester, a motion.
I think, my opinion is that we need to do it before the new board is sat. I think it's important that we do it for December and have it, taken care of so that it's not what we're doing in the first meeting. I think it's important that we do it in December.
Okay, so Tracy, what do you think we need by the December meeting?
I think we need specifically what's gonna happen, you know, who's gonna be cut. If that 44,000 is gonna be cut, what, and if it, you know, and then if the teachers raise $10,000, we can say this is priority one, this is priority two, and if they raise 10,000, we can knock priority one off the, you know, off the list,
If
or
we
priority
collapse
two.
if we don't have any higher.
Right, you know, that, okay, this is gonna happen, but it's similar to, yeah. You know, I think we need to prioritize it, and we need to, this is the first thing that's gonna come back.
Well, let's schedule that then as an agenda item for the December meeting.
There needs to be, we kicked the can as far down as it can't roll downhill. We're caught up to it. We need to make a decision. I would be in favor of it before Christmas, before the Christmas break, on a regularly scheduled board meeting. On the December board meeting, regularly scheduled, we need to make a decision. If not before.
And then, you know, how that's
And we
gonna
need all
look.
the input we can get before then, in terms of possible alternatives that you come up with between now and then. Let us know.
Can we, I know we have our sinking fund. Is there a way that we could tap that anyway? No.
Very tight controls on the sinking fund, because those are tax dollars, they have to go toward building repair, major infrastructure, roofing replacements, boilers. So very narrow, very tight audit control funds. So you can't utilize those for staff or programming. So unfortunately, that's a large fund. It's actually well endowed right now, and thankfully it is, because we spent over 80,000 out of it last summer re-roofing a fair amount of both buildings, and we still have well over 350,000 in that account. But it's very narrow, and so it's for that purpose.
Can I ask one quick question, because I'm a little confused from Friday to now. I left Friday thinking that 43,000 was whittled down to like 10 or something, and now we're back up to 40-something? Was I hearing wrong?
In the meeting, we talked about ways to whittle that down.
Right.
But because that was not a board meeting, there was no action. And so all the feedback that was given, if we did this or if we captured this, it would bring it down, and if we did that, it would bring it down even more. So we talked about lots of options. And then the board talked about, okay, what's the motion here? Where do we start? You've got to get something down to create a discussion. I take my direction on the board agenda from the board president, and the board president gets feedback from the board members. I'm going to do my best to capture those sentiments in a motion. Whether or not it passes just means, in this case, there will be an alternate motion at some point, or there will be other circumstances that come up that maybe somewhat mitigate the need for those savings.
So if we're looking as a group of people to do something about that, we need to aim for $40-some thousand.
That's the complete amount, 44.
But realistically, it's probably more like 10 to 20.
Well, can we do something?
Yeah, you've got some built-in some savings. So if you were to say, if I'm going to find a wealthy benefactor, and what's the check they're cutting, 44 would evaporate the whole thing. We do have some other savings that we could create, like you just talked about with the collapse of the program in a semester. So it could be less. Any amount will help.
The thing is too, whatever it is that we come up with, it has to be pretty quick and pretty immediate. It can't, it can't be something that we plan for in the future.
Would you want to make, would we all want to collapse that program right now? Or do you think that's unfair to kids without hearing some from them, the ones that are going to be affected?
Well, I know at the last discussion, the sentiment was don't collapse that program because of the college credits and Career Tech Ed initiative and employability factors. The point that I made though was at some point as the vacancy continues, you may actually be not giving the kids exactly what they signed up for. So at some point it may become very prudent, to Willa's point, to capture those savings. Is that point today? I don't know. The recommendation, that and the feedback I was hearing was, let's see if we can find somebody. We have kids in a class, and if we have someone out there,
Collapse it now and then we don't.
Well, they're not gonna get credit for it anyhow, right?
they're getting credit for the fall semester. And so they're in a class now. If you fold it at January, boom, then they get rescheduled.
They get,
But they still get credit if they finish.
yes.
Right.
But get a semester now, they won't.
No.
We're getting it in self-pay until the semester, so it probably should be one of those things on our organized list of, you know, what's the priority, what is the
Oh, we
fall.
should try send out a letter that looks like it's been.
No, because all the salary funds are down.
Well, I think if people want to know, this is what's happening.
You're
So-
saying a letter to the parents?
Between now, what I would ask is between now and the December meeting, and preferably before the end of this week, just so we can pull these figures together, if the board wishes to see any different permutations of any of the options that I've already presented, to include a dollar figure for the collapse at the semester of this program, sub-cost between now and the end of the semester, I can quantify a bunch of different variables.
And what is the math situation look like? I know we have 2 classes of several maths. Is that on the board with us?
There's some sub savings in there as well.
Sub savings versus collapsing math?
None of that's been
We
discussed.
haven't discussed that. Has that been brought to anybody's attention that that's an option? Is that something that maybe we need to look at too? I mean, if we want full disclosure, you know, that's something that, we have 3 math classes, or 3 grades of math, right? Algebra, geometry, and algebra 2 that have 2 classes, correct?
Is that, Shelley, are those the 3 that are
correct.
comboed or split?
Yes, they're all three
And
split.
forgive me, maybe I thought this was already talked about, maybe it wasn't, but the possibility of those all, and I know it's not best for kids, but bringing those 3 classes together in one room, correct?
It's an option.
I thought you
It's an option.
Fine.
Yeah.
At that time.
Problem is, we don't want to stand on that. We don't want to
Right.
make a decision.
Yeah, well, and I understand that, but if we're gonna have it out there and it is being considered as an option, if you're a math, the math teachers need to know that it could be considered. I mean, correct?
I guess, Ben, what would benefit at least our money at home is just some sort of representation of the numbers and all the possibilities. We've done that before when we looked at just annual budget for the rest of the summer. Just some sort of a nice, clean, little presentation. Here are all the possibilities, these are the numbers, these are how we work.
I know I've shared some of those options, and please let me know, as you look at those, please think of the other things you want to see, because I don't want to miss something. And there's going to be 7 different looks at this document, so from each of your perspectives, either send it to me directly or send it to Sue, she'll get it to me, and I'll cost out every variable that you'd like to look at.
And the thing is, I don't think we need to see permutations of it, we just need to see,
I was
this is,
thinking the
this
same
is,
thing,
this is,
just
if this
a-
cut were made, so we could pick and choose. Is that what you're thinking?
Is there going to be another meeting to discuss that, to assign these dollar amounts, or is someone gonna do it and send an email to you guys?
Well, we
or-
would have to discuss it in an open meeting.
It has to be discussed in an open meeting.
Yeah, correct.
You'd have to deliberate, discuss, and then decide.
I like the idea of just a,
I mean, but, I mean, like, bringing it point blank,
without the option.
cutting the music teacher by 1 hour a day is gonna save
Exactly.
$5,000 for the last semester. I mean, it needs to be that simple.
Yeah,
That's exactly
and
what
that's
we're
what
doing.
Ben is going to.
And I've already done that.
And the finance committee is an open meeting? And so is there going to be another one before the regular December board meeting?
If the finance committee wishes to get together and schedule that as a workshop before then,
Or
But
it
it's
is
my
a special
impression
board
that
meeting.
the committee though, it becomes an open meeting.
So how is the special board meeting or a finance committee meeting communicated with the public?
well, a board meeting or a special board meeting
Right.
is.
I mean, a board meeting, there's a schedule for the whole year, I get that.
But then there's also sometimes alternate ones that get called, you know, like if the board wanted to get together later this week to talk about this.
Right, and that would
we'd have to
potentially be an open
publicize
meeting,
that.
yes. So is it, I mean, I haven't seen it posted on the Facebook page or anywhere else, so how would I have known to show up if I was concerned?
Yeah, I don't know, because I honestly haven't publicized committee meetings because we do those so infrequently. I think we've had 1 in 3 years, maybe 2.
Okay. I mean, but there should be some way of communicating, because maybe I would have shown up at the finance
Can we
meeting.
direct Ben to post it on the website, on Facebook,
Sure.
and it's also should be posted at the
It's always
office,
posted
as well as the
at
office.
Well,
and then-
it would be posted wherever, you know, wherever you want to post it.
It has been posted on the Facebook page, or that's an idea?
I'm saying, can we direct that? so
Okay,
that
I mean, because that would be a great idea, I would see it that way,
cautious
but
on
I'm
that
never
just
gonna walk by
because
Ben's
I want
office.
to watch out what our area districts are doing to position themselves to capture our loss. So if we're gonna put this position is worth this much.
Oh, no, we're not.
No.
Well, yeah, but I guess that's the last that I had meant, so
But
public
again,
meeting.
we're not obligated to post on Facebook.
Exactly, so
Yeah, I'm
even on
not
our
saying that
website and so
information, I'm
forth.
saying the fact that we're.
No, I'm not saying post that information, I'm just saying that there's going to be the finance committee is going to meet Tuesday at 6 o'clock. I mean, and then if I show up, I obviously hear that, but I'm not saying to post that
But
information.
is that public, is that, we share that money publicly in a board meeting, correct? Right, so it's not,
And we shared it in the October meeting when we talked
Right.
about the amount, and then the November 4th discussion, we went down, this option saves this. So, yeah, it would be able for any public to.
right, and then if it is anything that needs to be kept private, we would go into closed session.
Yeah, you could only go into closed session.
So I know we
if-
can't do this, but I'm saying if there is something
Right.
that's private, we would go into closed session.
So can we try to make it a point to post or do something, advertise the special meetings or something? I mean,
Have we posted on the website?
Every board meeting.
Yes,
every regular scheduled board
Every
meeting
board.
is on.
And every special.
every special is on our website. I think it's just a matter of getting people aware of where to look.
Where does it go on the website? I mean, you just add it to the schedule that's a page in somewhere? Or is it like posted, if I log
It's
into
under
the
the
website, am I
district.
gonna see it?
School board. Schools district tab where your meeting calendar is.
So I would have to go to that calendar every single day,
You would have to look under that tab, yeah.
every single day.
Well, and everybody's information is and all of our information is posted on the website as well, so
I think what
speak
she's
for
asking is,
everybody.
will you please put it on Facebook?
Or even put it on the homepage of the school pages.
Well, is the finance committee going to even have a meeting? Have you discussed that yet? Are you even sure that's going down?
I haven't heard that.
Is that what we want to do?
I would be more inclined to have a committee of the whole meeting
Yeah, I
and
do
have
too.
everybody, I don't think that limiting it
Let's
to,
just get that together.
we'll just have a special board meeting.
I think that's been the concern in over time, and I've not only been here 3 years, but I know some of the time when there's a committee meeting of 3, and there's 4 other board members.
Well, I mean, we had this discussion last spring when there were special meetings that the public didn't know anything about either.
Every one of those was advertised.
And there may be ways that we can improve announcements.
That's what I'm saying, improve
Such as
improve
putting it on the
communication so that we
homepage
hear.
of the website.
That's-
But whether or not we want to get involved with social media.
It doesn't have to be social media, I mean, there just has to be a way.
It's
a better
it's typically the website, it's always in the same place. I give every one of them to Steve, he posts every one of them. And then there is obviously it's an internal staff email, those typically I'll share with the EA. And then there's a posting on the window to the superintendent's office, so. And that's what we do all the time.
So with this meeting that.
Can we set another meeting?
Sure. set another meeting.
Where I think it needs to be before Thanksgiving. I think we should be creative about meetings as opposed to cutting. Let's all change our attitude and our attitude.
Grant Wright.
I challenge. We all know somebody who has
Grant
that.
Wright.
Okay, what would, how about next Monday? Give us time to think about it.
I'm going up to the sinking fund.
I first need to know what options you want costed out. But yeah, I could pull that together, Michelle and I can pull that together in a day or two, just as long as we know all the things that.
You know, it's opening day, I don't think I should. Although there will be more.
You know, that's true.
Oh, yes.
An announcement.
Oh, we do.
November 17th.
Announce a special board meeting.
We never have, we could.
Right.
How did you get it? We have a phone system.
Oh, absolutely, perfect.
Yeah.
And that would let all parents know, and they can let everyone else know.
In fact, they may, you know, it could be like, bring your extra money.
There will be a fee to get out of the room.
Nothing to get in, but in order to
Yeah, in order to leave.
To get out, November 17th.
6:30?
So any questions I'll have by tomorrow? That's just not really, I have a feeling.
Yeah, the more time that we have to cost things out, the more information we'll have, so.
And
Please,
people who are here, if you
what
have. 6:30. If you have suggestions that you can, concrete suggestions to bring us for next Monday, do it. I mean, yeah. Or share them with either myself or Ben or Shelley before then.
Nothing outside of preschool, I've asked.
Moving on, I think that we're ready to continue with our superintendent's report.
Thank you. Quick updates in curriculum, instruction, and administrative. November elections came through well for both the millages, so thanks to the community and school district staff and the board for all the support. Operational millage passed 70%, sinking fund at 61. Both of these are strong numbers when you look at the general election. Good turnout overall, so thanks to everyone. I'll continue on with the thanks we saw and heard a little bit in Shelley's update about Chris and Connor's efforts to send Kenny Behrens to Japan. And after Mark Shillette aired the story initially, I know he talked to Chris and Connor from the time it was aired until 6 a.m. the next morning, so it was about 16 hours. Over $10,000 came in 16 hours. And it's over 13,000 now. The goal was 6,000. The fund was, as they quickly eclipsed the goal in that 16-hour stretch, the fund was expanded from trip to trip and college. And so what a magnanimous gesture on behalf of Chris and Connor, of course, taking care of this initiative and all the support from the students and the community. Just a heartfelt, powerful statement about the strength of Central Lake and the strength of our community and how we support one another.
Then can I throw something in there real quick?
Please.
Is that I got comments from people outside of the school district.
For sure.
Who had seen the story and was just really excited and happy to see stories like that coming out.
I got a couple
It's just
calls
nice to
from
get that kind of response from
Yeah.
outside of something.
Cadillac, Petoskey, Traverse City, folks
And
calling.
even Mark Shillette, people saw the follow-up newscast on that. He reported that in a very personal way, which I was so impressed by. And so it wasn't just a news report, but he showed some personal.
He had a real connection.
Kenny was recognized in Walmart as a Central Lake celebrity twice on Saturday.
That's hilarious.
had the biggest grin on his face
Oh, he did.
the entire day, probably all weekend. Teacher evaluations training continues. Principal Dorenzi's done her third and fourth day. I've done my first 2 days. From my experience as I looked at this, the 5D plus model that the ISD together is doing really emphasizes the administrator not as someone whose role is to sort and select, but whose job is to coach and support. And it's a real positive model when you look at it from that standpoint. The thrust behind it is to provide regular and consistent feedback and suggestions. I think they're called noticings and wonderings about things you notice, things you wonder, to create an instructional dialogue around teaching and learning and instructional focus. Huge thank you to NHS students. I can cut this one short because of course they were here. But they have put into practice their each one teach one model. They've really been working hard on helping peer tutor, and we're seeing the benefits of that. Bus crowding update. We've noticed, and I know if you've been in the elementary parking lot after school, you may have noticed, as the weather gets colder, we don't have as many of our kids walking home. Many of them will ride early in, but maybe will walk home on a nice warm day, or ride a bike or a skateboard. Well, obviously now with snow, we're starting to feel the effects of the loss of the 21st Century Program, which used to house around 38, 44, 45 kids a day. Now those youngsters are not cared for from 3 to 5:30 after school. So they're trying to either walk home, ride the bus home, skateboard, what have you. As the weather gets worse, more and more of them are getting on the bus, which is creating a larger and larger crowding concern. Looking at the administrative regs and board policy and at our current handbook says, but I don't think it's been enforced in probably over a decade since I talked to Larry Essenberg about it, the language in the handbook says that bus transportation is provided outside the village limits. However, we bus folks inside the village limits and have historically for many, many years. And I think that has become solidified more so recently because of the ages of many of the riders. So now that we have 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, preschoolers, and obviously K through 12 on the bus, we have really young children riding. One of our operating processes or procedures is to make sure that we see the parent or guardian, we the driver sees the parent or guardian at the door. They're physically there to receive a pre-K through, is it 1 or 2? Pre-K through first grader. So if you have a 4-year-old, a preschooler, the bus driver does not let the child off if there's no one at the house, because that could be extremely unsafe. So oftentimes, and especially now as the crowding situation is getting worse, I have the radio in my office. I know Shelley does, Cindy does. Tiffany, the elementary secretary, she's the one who monitors, does the data entry for the people transportation system and coordinates bus ridership. Frequently we'll hear, no one's home at such and such address, circling the block. No one's home on the second pass. Tiffany then makes a judgment call, continue the route, continue the route. 10 minutes later, I reach so-and-so, because of course what she's doing is trying to reach, whether it's parent, guardian, the babysitter, the place of work, whatever. She's trying to reach someone at that address. It's gotten to the point that it's created a real bit of turmoil amongst the transportation department, and trying to determine ridership is paramount to fixing the problem. So the first step is figuring out, of the 3 buses, are 2 of them under full and is 1 over full, or what? Are they all over full? We just don't know. And the reason we don't know is because of 2 things. Number 1, we're busing inside the village, which creates more students than it would otherwise. Number 2, we have been working to the best of our ability, which is what we want to do, provide new customer service, to help folks with those alternate drop-offs. But to coin Tiffany, it has turned into dial a ride. And she's the one that catches it first on. And so she said to me, as an example, there's a couple of folks, maybe 10, maybe 20, who might have 5 different stops on 3 different buses. And she's got to keep track of that day in, day out with bus notes. And that, I think it never came to a head last year or the year before that, because it's 21st century club. The ridership load was just never there. You combine these two, and you have a real mess. And so it's something that we're beginning to address with a letter that will be going home to folks, asking for them to select their primary address. And so they will select and report back to Tiffany their primary address, and then she will begin to look at ridership loads. Once we have a primary address established, we can then say, we have 30 on this bus and 50 over here. That's the first step before we decide, do we need to make any route adjustments? Do we need to move 10 kids off this and over to here? So she's working diligently on that. Shelley and I helped her with that letter, so that letter will be going out. Any adjustments to routes will be communicated by phone and in writing to any parents. It's not the recommendation right now of Larry Essenberg or Shelley or myself that we cease busing within the village. However, it is going to be part of the solution that we have to look at. We want to make sure we keep all things on the table. The one thing we don't want, though, is 3- and 4-year-olds walking 3/4 of a mile with 6-foot snow berms in February. That's just not safe. And so I fully understand why we've been busing past Covert Street going south and north of the Blue Pelican. I understand that because we have youngsters on the bus. So,
And I just want to comment as a parent that there may be parents of older children, such as myself, that may not be aware of that issue. And sometimes I use the bus and sometimes I don't. And maybe a message needs to go out to parents such as myself that says, if you're able to provide transportation full-time for your student, it could really help us out. So even a message like that, we could use.
That's a good point. I think in part, the letter that we sent out does not ask that. We definitely could send that message. We haven't yet, but if it becomes clear that we're so overloaded that we need to reduce ridership, that can definitely be part of the solution. We don't want to end up in a situation where we have to envision a 4th bus, because that's just not an option. So we would have to look at anything, and that may very well be one of the
Or suggest carpooling, because
Sure.
I take a lot of kids that have my own. All right, sorry.
How big is your vehicle?
I still have room.
There you go, we can add to it. I think that's it for bus. Finance personnel, this is going to be, I can skim through this. I just was saying, board met to review mid-year budget adjustments since the October monthly meeting. We met November 4th, November 7th, looking at taking care of mid-year budget adjustments. So I'll speed right through. Technology updates, Steve. You knew I would do this. I was going to try and summarize COP and COLI, and I thought that's boring, so I will leave it up to you.
Well, that was the most drama we had all year.
I'll leave it up to you if you wish to go into that, but I didn't.
Yeah, well, it was none of our doing, but if any of you are COLI customers, Chain of Lakes Internet in the village here, you may have noticed that your service was interrupted on Friday. And it had to do with who owns the tower and who pays who rent for using it. We don't own it, we didn't shut them down, but the people who do own the tower did shut COLI down for a little while. I don't know that it was a misunderstanding, miscommunication, whatever you want to call it, but I guess they got it straightened out. All I had to do was unlock the gate twice. So, that's that story. But mostly, I suppose, I've gotten a fair amount of training this month, which has been really appreciated. I spent 2 days with Cindy just a couple days ago getting more training with Power School.